What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Going the Distance podcast presented by ImmaculateSports.com. Twitter's at ImacSports.
Instagram is also at Max Sports.
TikTok, YouTube, Immaculate Sports. It's episode 262 and a lot of good stuff going on. We got a week left in the baseball season. Week 3 just finished in the NFL season, and that was one of the ugliest weeks of football I've ever seen. College football is amazing. We could probably have our own hour-long show about all the crazy stuff that's happened in college football, but for this week, we're keeping it about 30% each.
Yeah, it's been going to be a pretty straightforward episode this week before we get into the MLB playoffs next week, and then obviously deeper into the NFL season and the college season as well too. So we're going to do power rankings for the MLB. We're going to do our first MVP check-in in the NFL as we're 3 weeks into the season now, and then obviously some college football stuff in the middle. But we always got to get started with our opener. And Skyler, you got a big one here today. Tell me about the favorite thing that you saw this past week.
How about the ABS system getting passed for next year's Major League Baseball? That's the automatic ball strike challenge system. And this is something I wrote an essay about in high school, like 10 years ago. Like, we have this technology. When are we going to figure out the right time to do it, the right amount you get? And I'll read from MLB straight here what they say, the rules. Each team next season will get 2 challenges. If you're successful, you keep it. Challenges could only be initiated by a pitcher, catcher, or batter right after the pitch. That's when you tap your helmet or your hat. That's how you signal it. No help from the dugout at all. They don't want any Houston Astros stuff going on with that. And each extra inning, a team will be rewarded an extra challenge. So I'm very excited. We've had this in the minors for a long time. And it's what the players want, I think, too. So it should be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think when it was first announced a while ago, now at this point, that the MLB was looking into using like robotic umpires and stuff like that, that kind of set off a trigger in everybody's brain of baseball fans. And I think they've definitely done a good job, the MLB has, in experimenting with it, realizing what is the correct capacity to use it as well too, making sure that, you know, things like framing are still important, things like umpires are still important as well too. And I think now for a while, this past year, they've perfected it. We saw it in the All-Star game as well too, which is cool. We've been seeing it in spring training, I think, for a year or two now at this point too. Obviously in the minors, you see it every single game. And now we get to see it in MLB, which I think is good. And I think is going to be helpful for all the Twitter warriors, all the way up to the players. Like, it's just going to make things a bit easier and a bit more straightforward when it comes to the game. So that was partially my opener as well too.
Yeah.
The thing that I wanted to talk about as well is Leo DeVries and his tear that he's been on for the Double-A Midland Rockhounds over the past couple of weeks since he got called up, actually. When he got called up, it was a slow first 10 games or so, but since then, I don't have the exact numbers, but he's hit like 10 homers in 15 games. The playoffs are going on right now for the Double-A Midland Rockhounds. They won the first half, so they get to secure a playoff spot, which is, I always think is weird in the minor leagues. But
yeah,
they started their first series in the Double-A playoffs last week. They won that, and then had game 1 of the Double-A Texas League Championship, I believe, on Sunday. And Leo Dallas had 2 homers, both from the right side, both pull side homers, which I like to see. And look like, I mean, we don't have exact exit velocity numbers, but it looks like they were, you know, at least 105, 106, maybe even higher than that, which is cool to see. He's been on a tear. He's still only 18 years old, and it's fun to watch him, you know, hit his stride in Double-A, because hopefully he's going to be the A shortstop or second baseman or wherever he lands for a long, long time.
At the very least, this kid's got some ice in his veins, right?
Yeah. So, some epic bat flips in there as well, too, if you want to take the StatCast reports on those. But moving on into our Raider and Jet report, another week, another loss for both of our teams. But some interesting games, I guess. So I'll let you go ahead and get it started with the Jet report.
All right. Well, Tampa Bay beats the Jets 29-27 in a really ugly game that could have gone either way. There were about 100 yards of holding penalties just in the first quarter. I think that number got over 300 for the entire game, which is just comical. And that seemed like a theme across the league. They were going to be tighter on the getting an early start on that and holding and stuff like that. Tyrod Taylor gets to start for the Jets against Baker, and there's not really much more you can ask for from your 36-year-old backup quarterback, but he does throw a pretty bad pick six, and his only deep shot he took of the entire game was dropped by Tyler Johnson, maybe the worst wide receiver two in the NFL. Garrett Wilson, Braylon Allen, and Armand Membu, pretty much the only positives from the offense in this one. On defense, the Williams brothers were absolute animals in this game again, and they always are. I wrote this before Quincy Williams hit the IR, which is just brutal, man. This defense is in trouble. It does seem like more of a scheme issue, though, with the Jets. Like, Sauce is a great press, hands in your face kind of guy, but the other members of the secondary are just getting absolutely torched out there. Will McDonald makes what felt like a once in a lifetime play on the blocked field goal score, but then 8 more guys did it on Sunday. And then we blew the game on a 33-yard Baker Mayfield scramble. So the Jets are 0-3 once again. Miami's coming up on Monday Night Football. If Justin Fields is able to come back this week, I would hope we could show the Dolphins what's up with our new offense, but we're probably going to be picking in the top 3 and looking for another quarterback if we lose that one, because Jermaine Johnson's hurt again. Like I said, Quincy Williams is back on the IR. Our quarterbacks can't stay on the field, and fucking Michael Clemens is still starting somehow. That's the Jet Report.
Yeah. Moving over to the Raider Report, I wish it could be a little bit less grim, but it's not that much less grim. The Raiders lose 41-24 against Marcus Mariota in Washington on Sunday. Weird cast of characters for Washington in this game. Like I said, Marcus Mariota, Austin Eckler tore his ACL, his Achilles in week 2. So it was a running back trio of Jeremy McNichols, Chris Rodriguez Jr., and of course, Ja'Cory Krosky-Mara, a.k.a. Bill. All 3 of those dudes get a good amount of touches. 2 of them get into the end zone. Mariota doesn't really have to do much because their defense was hounding the Raiders for most of this game. Geno Smith did play great for what he could have. 19 for 29, 289, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Did take 5 sacks, but that was completely not his fault. The offensive line was terrible, and it felt like every single play there was a free rusher. I've never seen an O-line be this bad. It's quite legitimately the worst offensive line in all football. And I do think Geno Smith did a good job of navigating pressure and still making the best of a bad situation. Ashton Jeanty, I think, had his best game as a pro so far, 17 carries for 63 yards, the long of 18. We're at the point through 3 games where he has 146 yards after contact and only 144 rushing yards on his career. So that tells you about how bad this offensive line is. 101% of his yards are yards after contact, which is just mind-boggling. Receiving-wise, was an interesting game. Brock Bowers only 4 catches on 5 targets. Jacoby Myers 3 catches on 4 targets, but that's because Trey Tucker went fucking ridiculous. 8 catches, 145 yards, 3 touchdowns, 9 targets. His 4 touchdowns on the season is now tied for the most out of any receiver, which is kind of cool, I guess. And 217 receiving yards, I believe, is 17th in the NFL. So good for Trey Tucker there. He's having a good first 3 games of the season. Defense didn't play great. I'll say that. We did force 1 fumble. It was a Stanford combo fumble, so that was kind of cool because Thomas Booker forced it and Caillou Blue Kelly picked it up. Max Crosby had a sack. We didn't really do much besides that. But it was really a game where, I mean, you think about really good football teams and you think of like all 3 phases, all 3 like levels of offense and defense have to be good. And it's really the fundamentals that were bad. The special teams were terrible. We gave up a punt return touchdown. Deebo Samuel started off the game with a kick return that took him to like the 35-yard line of the Raiders, or even farther than that. I forget exactly how far it went. And the offensive line was just terrible. So definitely did not look good there. But I guess the good thing is that we know exactly what we need to get better, and that's primarily just offensive line. If this was a good offensive line team, I think there's a very legitimate chance that this is, a 10-11 win team. But without the offensive line and with the teams that we're going to be facing, especially in the division, when it comes to pass rushes, you have to be on your game. And I think the ceiling's now kind of set at like 7 or 8 wins, even with the light schedule that we have. But I hate saying this, it's only week 3 or week 4, but looking forward to the draft and picking the best tackle available.
I watched Bengals mock draft last night. He had you guys taking Spencer Fano, Utah left tackle.
And I'll take it. Take the boring pick. It's just got to be the right pick at this point. But anyways, moving on to that, we will talk baseball first before we get into football again. The player, pitcher, and rookie of the week as we get into the last week of the regular season in the MLB. The player of the week, Skyler, who do you choose?
Yeah, I'm going to go against what the league picked and stick with the numbers here with Spencer Steer because the Reds have won 5 in a row now. And in those 5 games, Spencer Steer's hitting .353, 4 homers with 10 RBIs. I'm not sure why he didn't qualify on MLB.com. Maybe that's a mistake because he had 17 at-bats. But Cincinnati is on my radar now, so he's the player of the week.
My player of the week is going to be a starter who had perhaps his best start in his MLB career, and that's Hunter Green. He goes a complete game shutout, 1 hitter, 1 walk, 9 Ks against the Chicago Cubs for the surging Cincinnati Reds, who now, I guess, control their own destiny in the playoffs. So that's interesting. I saw some tweets from Cincinnati as well, too, talking about packing Great American Ballpark this week, which is cool to see. Ohio baseball is on the up right now. Pitcher of the week.
Yeah, this is Hunter Green for me. Another Cincinnati Red. Of course, I had to mention him after the complete game shutout because he threw one of the best games of the entire season against Chicago this week. Only 1 hit and 1 walk. Good stuff.
Yeah, Hunter Green. I just mentioned him for my player of the week. Big time start, gets a good team, and dominates. On to rookie of the week, and this one could get interesting.
Yeah, I feel like I should mention Blaine Krim. Failed Rangers prospect, having a very nice September with the Rockies. But I'm going to go with Drake Baldwin because he's also a player of the week candidate. I went back and forth. 5 extra base hits for him, 9 for 21. Unfortunately, it's just a little too late for those guys in Atlanta, but fantastic season for the catcher.
Yeah, why not give a shout out to Blaine Krim as my rookie of the week? The 28-year-old first baseman, only 5'10". I would say only 5'10" because I'm 5'10", but still, regardless, he goes 6 for 15, 3 homers, 6 RBIs, 3 walks, OPS at 1450. So good week for Blaine Krim. Probably just a cup of coffee in the big situation, but still cool. Why not, right?
Yep.
On to our power rankings. Is there any team outside of your top 15 that we get into before we get into our last power rankings of the regular season?
Yeah, San Francisco and Texas are getting dropped out of here. They're not making the postseason. Just a really rough 2 weeks for San Francisco.
Yeah, Texas is the only team that I dropped out of my rankings. They were at 13 for me, obviously moved outside of 15 now. I talked about this a couple weeks ago when they lost Anthony Eovaldi and were still in my rankings. I was like, I don't know how long they're going to do this for. Turns out it was just until that moment because they've lost 7 in a row, are pretty much out of it in the AL. So Texas, probably a number 16 team for me, but they are out of the 15 for sure. Which brings us to number 15.
At 15, I'm going to give the Diamondbacks a nod here. They've been unranked basically the entire season, but they're back here in the top half of the league. I don't think they're going to do anything against the Dodgers or the Padres this week, but great for them to come back within 1 game of the wild card. They're sellers at the deadline, so another what-if situation for the Diamondbacks. Feels like that's every other year with them.
Yeah, Diamondbacks, my number 15 team is 0-2. They go 7-4 over this stretch, 5th in the league in WRC plus. Go from unranked to that number 15 spot. And a lot of people outlined the D-backs when they sold at the deadline that they could be a team that still finds their way into the playoff conversation. I think that was partially due because of Zach Gallen's rough first half, Brandon Fox, interesting first half, Eduardo Rodriguez kind of not really showing up. And now that they've gotten a bit more consistent starting pitching, also including Ryan Nelson, and their lineup stayed hot even without Eugenio Suarez and Josh Naylor. They've got themselves back into a playoff conversation. one game out. That one game does feel like it's a bit of a distance, though, because of their remaining schedule and because of the Mets and the Reds still being ahead of them for that spot. So, good second half by Arizona and a good story this year from a team that's always fun to watch. Number 14.
At 14, I have the New York Mets down another 2 spots. I feel like we've been doing this for the past 2 months, just dropping them a little bit here, a little bit there. And now they're looking on the outside. They got absolutely shit on by Philly. They're down to their very last pitching options before Jose Siri is starting games on the mound for them. They got 3 games left against the Cubs, also the Marlins. And I would imagine Miami plays that series like it's in late October, too, like they have been this month. So I am leaning no postseason for the Mets.
Number 14 for me is going to be the Cincinnati Reds. And I just got the notification that Ellie De La Cruz just hit his 21st homer of the season. So things are probably popping in Great American Ballpark. They go up one of my rankings, 8-4, 8th in the league in ERA, and that's the big selling point here. You're going to score runs in that stadium that they play in, but if you can stop the opposing team from scoring runs, that's what's going to make you a playoff team. And Cincinnati Reds currently are that right now, holding that third spot in the NL wild card with the Mets right now. Will they get it? I don't know. That's why, them and the Mets are, super close here on my rankings, but Cincinnati's on the come up, I guess. Number 13.
Yeah, and for all those reasons, I gave Cincinnati the +2 here from 15. This 8-4 stretch they're on has been really fun to watch. Things get real after they swept the Cubs, of course, too, and finally catching those Mets. So now we just wait and see if the offense can do enough to beat the Pirates, and then they battle for their lives against Milwaukee.
Yeah. I do have the Mets at number 13. They moved down one spot on my rankings, but they are still one spot above the Cincinnati Reds that I just mentioned. They go 4-8 over this 2-week stretch, which is rough. But the reason why I have them over the Reds is that lineup is just so much more experienced than them and playing in big games. Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso have all hit numerous big-time homers in the playoffs that you know that they can show up for this last week of the season. It would be a total, lull Mets thing to do to just choke out of it and let the Cincinnati Reds take your spot. But as of right now, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, no one should be shocked if the Mets take this last spot, but I think they'll probably be the team that gets it done. Number 12.
At 12, I got the Houston Astros -2, and Houston's been able to stay around 500 for this entire second half, which worked for most of the season with all their injuries. But Seattle woke up again, and that makes things a little more difficult. Luckily for Houston, they finished the season against 2 teams they've dominated for the past 10 years or so, the A's and the Angels. So I do think this is another team that holds their own destiny. I just don't really like the product on the field right now, that's all. But they could easily find their way in the postseason again.
Yeah, the Houston Astros are also my number 12 team. They moved down 4 spots for me despite a 6-6 week. We know Yordan Alvarez is now hitting the shelf again as well, too, which sucks for them. Very injury-plagued year and just general career for him. The offense has pretty much disappeared. Pitching is pretty typical Astros pitching. They're going to find guys who get outs regardless. But this recent series against the Seattle Mariners makes it a playoff spot look like a potential not happening for the Houston Astros. And we haven't said that in 10 years, 11 years at this point. It's been a long time. Number 11.
At number 11, the Cleveland Guardians, not ranked, right? But there's a reason these guys have been an honorable mention for the entire year. You just can't kill Cleveland. And then they go out and go 11-2 over their last 2 weeks. They got 3 more games against the Tigers, so that division is absolutely still open. Down to 1 game against those gritty Tigs. Texas has a chance to play spoiler against them in that last series, but things are looking so much better for Cleveland right now if they can win that series against Detroit.
Also, before we get too deep into this, I want to say how cool it is that only 1 team in the AL has clinched a playoff spot so far. There's a week left in the season. That's pretty nuts.
And they're not in America either.
Exactly. Yeah. No American League teams in America have clinched a playoff spot yet. And there's a week left in the season. That's pretty nuts to say. But my number 11 team is going to be the Boston Red Sox. They moved down 2 spots for me, going 5-6 over this 2 week stretch. Roman Anthony's still out, probably out through the regular season, which is going to suck for them. That's why I have a little bit less confidence in them than some of these other teams. I do think they still find their way into the playoffs, but I don't see them as a big time contender in comparison to some of these other squads that we'll get into in a few minutes here. Number 10.
I'm doing it. I'm dropping Detroit 5 spots down to 10. And wow is all I can say right now. They look like the best team in baseball 2 weeks ago when they were playing in the Bronx. And then they lose 9 out of 10 games. You can't get swept by Cleveland at home and expect to stay inside the top tier of teams. That was my thinking here. So I did it. I dropped them down to 10.
I dropped them too. The Detroit Tigers are number 10 for me. They moved down 7 spots. Losers of 6 in a row, 3-9 in their last 12. Currently up 1-0 right now in Cleveland. That is like a complete playoff game. It's cool to see a packed crowd in Cleveland on a Tuesday night, something that they don't do too often. But regardless, back to Detroit. They've struggled recently. It's just like one of those stretches that you feel like the sky is falling and there's nothing that you can do to fix it. And what better way to try to fix it than pitching in a big game with your ace in Tariq Skubal?
Yeah.
So, yeah, the Tigers number 7 or number 10. They moved down 7 spots on to number 9.
At number 9, I'm going to keep Boston where I had them last time. Not a good offensive stretch for these guys either. They were struggling to score on the Yankees and even the A's. But they do have a pretty good opportunity to flip the script this weekend against Toronto. That'll be a massive series. They finish off against Detroit, too. So really tough, right? But I feel like they have a little bit more momentum than Detroit. They didn't lose 9 in a row, even though their offense is struggling.
Team moving up a lot is Cleveland for me. They moved up to 10 for you as well too. They move up to the number 9 spot for me. A big +5. They go 11-2 over this stretch, post the best ERA in baseball at 1.62. They won 9 games in a row. They just lost Sunday to the Twins, but that didn't really matter too much because they kind of control their own destiny here against the Tigers, and it's a home series, which helps as well before they get into the weekend series at the end. Regardless, Cleveland's had a great 2-week, 3-week, 4-week stretch now at this point, and they find themselves in the top 10 for maybe the first time this season. I don't remember. Number 8.
It probably is.
Yeah.
I got the Chicago Cubs at 8. I'm going to drop them 1 spot. I haven't been that impressed with them the entire second half. And then you go out and get swept by Cincinnati. So I feel like I got to drop them at least 1 spot, even though they are locked for the wild card. We'll see who pitches in those 3 games. That's pretty much all I'm worried about with them.
I also have the Cubs at number 8. They surprisingly go up 2 spots in my rankings because it was a 7-5 2-week stretch. 5th best ERA in baseball, 9th best WRC plus. Obviously, it didn't culminate in those last 3 games against the Reds, which is a big thing. But despite having the 4th best record in baseball, they're number 8 because I just don't trust them.
Yep.
But in comparison to these other NL teams, which I think this NL this year is pretty damn good. So the Cubs, I don't believe they have a 2-starter that I really trust besides Shota Imanaga. Maybe they go into a complete like hell's loose Tampa Bay Rays type situation where they just throw whoever, whenever, at what times because they can. And Craig Counsell's a good manager, so I wouldn't be shocked if they find a way to do something like that. But I don't have a ton of faith in them having a big run in the playoffs. Number 7.
Yep. At 7, I'm giving it to Seattle. They're moving up 4 spots from 11, and they went 11-1 over their last 2 weeks. So they're finally starting to break away from the Astros. And I know that we both hate Houston, but I feel like we both knew outside of the bias that this Astros team was just not the same. And unfortunately for Texas, they were horrible. Seattle takes full advantage of this situation. And this is one of their most exciting teams ever in franchise history. So they're up in the top 10, upper echelon over the Cubbies because I trust Seattle's rotation a lot more.
Number 7 for me is where I slot the Toronto Blue Jays. So the one team that has clinched a playoff berth in the American League only gets number 7. They moved down 2 spots for me despite an 8-5 2-week stretch. That's because I just don't trust them. The lineup is good to an extent. They're like the first 5 batters. After that, it gets a little rough. Addison Barger's had a rough second half as well. Their starting rotation has a bunch of like 3 starters, I would say. I mean, any given one of them can have a night where they, go 6-7 shutout. Well, did not mean to say the meme there, but they can have a good start. But I just don't know if I trust it against some of these bigger lineups in baseball that they'll have to see in the playoffs. And I think when you compare them to a Mariners or a Yankees, they don't stack up that well. So that's why they're number 7. That's why, even with a good 2-week stretch of being the only team in the American League with the playoff berth, they moved down 2 spots. And it's also because there's some NL teams that are pretty damn good. Number 6.
At 6, I got Toronto. Very similar strategy here, right? There's been some pretty good stuff from Toronto these past 2 weeks. It's hard to complain. They got the top spot, the first AL team to hit 90 wins, all of that. I just wonder how they're going to maneuver around this Bo Bichette injury. And maybe that's something for next week's episode that we dive more into, but that's a very important player. Again, I just don't know if I trust these guys to win a playoff series.
Number 6 for me is where I slot the San Diego Padres. They go up. Don't move in this 2-week stretch. For me, they were number 6 last time. 7-6 as a team record during this stretch. Winners of 3 in a row, which is good. They won last night over the Milwaukee Brewers in a big series there. Not out of it for the division, but the odds are low there. Clinched a playoff spot already, which is huge. Trying to get that number 4 spots, which is going to be tough as well too, because the Cubs are ahead of them for that. But a 5 spot seems guaranteed at least, which doesn't really change much, 5 or 6 regardless. But Padres look good. We know that their bullpen's legit. We know that their lineup struggles sometimes, but their pitching staff is good enough in a playoff format that I don't think it's going to mean too much, at least in the initial stages of a playoff series. Number 5.
Yeah, at 5's where I got San Diego. I'll move them up 1 spot. And I originally thought I might be a little too high on San Diego based off of what I've been hearing on MLB Network from, guys who are actually there in the seats. But I think they could go toe-to-toe with anybody after the 5th inning in a postseason matchup. That amazing bullpen, like you said. Only 2 games back of the Dodgers. Pretty good resume against the other National League teams, too. And that seems to be the heaviest league this season. I don't see a massive drop-off when I see them playing a team like Milwaukee. And they did beat them yesterday.
Number 5 for me, moving up 6 spots, is where I slot the Seattle Mariners. They go 11-1 over this 2-week stretch. 2nd in ERA, 3rd in WRC+. Both sides of the ball have been getting it done. And I've talked about this team numerous times throughout the year. When they've gone on like a 4-game losing streak, I've moved them up in the rankings. That's just because they have all the makings of a World Series contender, especially now with Josh Naylor and Eugenio Suarez. I know Suarez hasn't been the best, but still, a player that can take one out of the ballpark at any ballpark at any time. They have a potential MVP in Cal Raleigh on their team. Julio Rodriguez is one of the best center fielders in baseball. And they got a lot of vets just around these guys that have had some postseason experience or have done something big in their career. The pitching staff is primed to make a run in October with Logan Gilbert, Luis Castillo, Brian Wu, who does have a bit of an injury, but hopefully that's nothing too major there. If they're healthy going into October, you might just see me pick this team to win the World Series. Number 4.
At number 4, I am keeping the Yankees at the same spot I had them. It was kind of bold to put them there over Toronto about a month ago, but I have no regrets as the Yankees also go 8-5 over the last 2 weeks. They win their last series against the Red Sox, which is a big one. And now they just cruise into the last week of the season. White Sox, Baltimore.
Number 4 for me is where I slot the Philadelphia Phillies. They don't move at all in my rankings. They go 8-4, close to best WRC+ in all of baseball. But the reason why they're not higher is not because of their lineup. It's still because of Zach Wheeler. And I know they have a great possible postseason rotation even without him, with Luzardo, Sanchez, Suarez, and Aaron Nola, who can make starts for them as well too. But without Zach Wheeler, it still hurts. And I think that loss is enough for me to put them behind some of these other teams in the NL who haven't seen an injury like that for them. So Philadelphia Phillies, second best record in all of baseball, but the fourth best team on my power rankings. Number three.
At number three, I'm going to keep the Dodgers here as well because I feel like Phillies had their number this year. But they did make a pretty big statement going 5-2 against the Giants last week and pretty much just destroying all of their postseason aspirations. So it's more of a head-to-head thing, not a postseason thing yet.
Number three for me is where I slot the Yankees. They move up 4 spots for me. Go 8-5 in this stretch, 6th best WRC plus. They're my highest ranking AL team because I think they're the best AL team. I think they have a great bullpen in the back end that's kind of reminiscent of the Padres. They have the starters to go with it as well too, at least at the top end. Rodon, Max Fried, even Cam Schlitter, Luis Eel. Like, I could trust those guys getting the ball in the playoffs. Their lineup has been good all year long. They have the best hitter in baseball, and Aaron Judge. Giancarlo Stanton, since he's been back, he's been a force. Bellinger's had a phenomenal season. Trent Grisham is taking steroids or something. I don't know how he's doing what he's doing, but he's having a great year. The Yankees move up 4 spots and are really the beneficiary of me gearing my power rankings this week around what can they do in the playoffs. And I think the Yankees are the most capable team of doing something in the playoffs in the American League. Number 2.
Yeah, number 2 for me is the Phillies, and that's because I did my rankings a little differently. I went based off of the resume, and they just had a 4-game sweep over the Mets. They looked really good in a series win over the Dodgers. I would like to see them be a little healthier before I pick them to go to the World Series, but I feel like they still got a little late inning magic working for them too. So we'll see when we get there. It's a tough place to play for anybody. So I think they are the number 2 regular season team.
Number 2 for me, moving down 1 spot, is where I slot the Milwaukee Brewers. Yes, they have the best record in baseball. They go 6-6 over this stretch, 9th best ERA, 10th best WRC plus. If this was the Brewers of 2 months ago, I'd be all in for it. I think there's no doubt that they would have a chance to go do something. But as of right now, I just don't feel that same way. And without having that superstar power in October can really hurt you. And we've seen teams before, get the number 1 record in the American League or the NL and just not deliver when it comes to the playoffs. And I'm not saying that the Milwaukee Brewers are going to do that, but I don't think anybody's going to be surprised if they get swept in the ALDS or something like that. And now number 1.
Yeah, I'm keeping Milwaukee. I think they're locked and loaded for the postseason at 95 wins. They shouldn't have to be stressing about anything here. That's kind of why I gave them the top spot. They're the only team that doesn't really have any worries going into this last week. But if San Diego does sweep them, maybe I wouldn't pick them to do anything. But I'm okay necessarily with Milwaukee. Just a fantastic entire season. Not a lot of teams can keep it going for this long.
Number 1, moving up 1 spot, is good old reliable Los Angeles Dodgers. They go 8-4, 6th best ERA in baseball, 2nd best WRC plus. And if it gears up like this in the playoffs, when we're talking next week and we're doing our playoff structure, bracket prediction, and Dodgers are seated up against the Chicago Cubs in LA, I don't trust the Cubs to shut down the Dodgers. After that, say they match up with the Brewers, I forget exactly how the bracket goes. Regardless, you could really pick them against anybody. They did it before last year. They have the best total player in baseball in Shohei Ohtani. They have Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, Max Muncy's healthy now. The list goes on and on. The pitchers are great, and wouldn't be shocked if they repeat in October this year.
No.
Yeah. Moving on to football, though, as we move on from baseball for now. We'll get back to it next week. Our defensive player, and rookie of the weeks in week 3 of the NFL. Who's your player of the week,
Yeah.
Skyler?
I heavily contemplated Isaiah Rodgers for the player of the week here, but I felt like there were some amazing offensive performances too. Caleb Williams, David Montgomery would have probably had some of the highest WAR numbers this week. But I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor. 17 carries, 102 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. The Tennessee front seven, that is pretty good on paper, could not stop this guy at all. 6 yards per carry. Amazing. Colts are 3-0.
My player of the week, Caleb Williams. 19 for 28, 298, 4 passing touchdowns against the Dallas defense. I know Dallas and defense aren't really two words that go together right now. But Caleb Williams had one of those games where he has this tendency to look erratic sometimes while still doing the spectacular. And I think this is one of those games where he just did not look sporadic. He looked under control. He knew what he was doing. Hit his wide receivers, was trusting the play calls, and spread the ball around as well too to Luther Burden, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, Roma Dunes. It did not matter. Caleb Williams was dialed in, and that's with DeAndre Swift not having the greatest running game either. So Caleb Williams, player of the week, and what's been his sophomore season that has completely impressed me.
Looks like he's playing free now, finally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Defensive player of the week. Wonder who's going to get this one.
The Vikings really needed some guys to step up this week with Carson Wentz coming out of the shadows to play quarterback for them. And Isaiah Rodgers led them from the jump. He had a pick six, 2 forced fumbles, and a return touchdown just to rub it in. I will shout out Jordan Davis. A guy that big should not be able to run 90 yards and win the game for Philly at his size. But this is Isaiah Rodgers' award.
Yeah, I saw Isaiah Rodgers had a 99.9 PFF grade, which is the first time somebody's ever gotten that grade. So I don't even need to go into the other stats. He gets it. Isaiah Rodgers, corner for the Minnesota Vikings, defensive player of the week. On to rookie of the week. Some good rookies having some good action in week 3.
Yeah, this one's still definitely up for interpretation at this point. We don't know everybody's role yet. But I am going to go with Quinshon Judkins. 18 carries, 94 yards, a touchdown, and they don't beat the Packers without him, plain and simple. Pretty amazing for a guy who hasn't really been there and just steps right in and gets the ball 20 times and beats the Packers, who many people think is the best defense in the league.
A couple honorable mentions for me. One to Quinshon. I think he had a great first real game, I'd say, in the NFL. Obviously, was a huge part in them being the Packers. Luther Burden had his first big game in the NFL, over 100 yards. Big catch on that flea flicker. But I went to Marion Hampton, maybe, biased towards my fantasy team. But 19 carries, 70 rush yards, a touchdown with 6 catches and 59 receiving yards. His best game as a pro. Najee Harris goes down with Achilles injury. He steps up. And if you watch that game, after Harris went down, he was the focal point of that offense for the Chargers. Could have had some bigger plays in there as well, too. Just a couple shoestring tackles that could have led to him breaking one to the end zone. But a big game for the rookie. And I think big things are coming for Marion. There's a reason why I drafted him 28th overall in our fantasy league. And I hopefully should be getting that now because he could be an RB1 the rest of the year. On to our last NFL segment that we got, and it's our first MVP check-in. It's always fun to do, MVP check-ins in any sport early in the year because that's kind of where we get, this guy was competing for an MVP. When we look back on it at the end of the year, maybe there'll be some names in there like that. Maybe there won't. Maybe all these guys will continue their great seasons. But before we get into the top 5, is there any honorable mentions that you want to talk about? Which I assume you do have.
Yeah, I do have 3 quarterbacks that didn't make the list, but they're definitely still in play here. Daniel Jones, the best QBR in football, leading the undefeated Colts. Jared Goff looked amazing last night, completely changed from that week 1 loss against Green Bay. And then Jordan Love of those same Packers, probably much higher on this list if they don't choke against the Browns.
Yeah, I have six guys or five guys that I want to mention really quick. First couple of QBs, Jalen Hurts is the first one. He's been great so far. Kind of just doing what they need to win. We saw them go down early in week 3 against the Rams. He has a good comeback victory when he's throwing the ball. Finds his guys, does a good job, gets a victory there. Hasn't turned over the ball yet this season. Daniel Jones is my other guy. I can't believe I'm saying his name in this spot. But he's been great for the Colts so far. I just don't think he's the top guy in their offense that's deserving of this, kind of foreshadowing for what we'll talk about later. James Cook is a guy I want to talk about as well, too. Obviously not as important as Josh Allen, but some of the runs he's made have been pretty ridiculous in the first 2 weeks of the year. A ton of touchdowns already. James Cook is a guy that could legitimately get 20 rushing touchdowns this season. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a guy I chose out of the Lions offense. He's been that complete safety blanket for Jared Goff this year. We saw it last night, fourth down early in the game. He goes right to Amon-Ra. Not something you see too often. There's guys, maybe Jamar Chase. I think Keenan Allen got to that level at some points. Devontae Adams, that you would rather throw the ball on fourth down on like a 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 than run it, just because you know that guy's going to get open. And Amon-Ra's that guy right now. Had 3 touchdowns in week 2, which is huge. Just so dominant in the red zone. And then the last one, I'm going to say Quentin Johnston. He's been really good. A lot of air yards so far for Quentin Johnston. He's been really that take off the top guy on that Chargers offense right now, and that I think adds a complete another level to it. Adds a run game, adds a short passing game to Keenan Allen and the tight ends. Adds Justin Herbert's legs a bit easier as well too. Quentin Johnston has stepped up big time this year, and I think is a big reason on why the Chargers are 3-0 in their first 3 games. But that brings us to number 5, and it is who?
All right, we'll kick it off with Jalen Hurts. He does make the list for me. He hasn't really had to do much in the passing game so far, but he shows everybody last week against the Rams that he could still sling it, especially against that defense too. And he's just 28th in passing right now with 3 passing touchdowns, but he's got 4 more on the ground. You mentioned it. They got 0 turnovers right now, and they're undefeated. So he makes the top 5 for me.
Number 5 for me is where I slot Baker Mayfield. 3-0 in 3 close games, and then having a QB that can win you close games, get those game-winning drives is obviously huge. 6 touchdowns, though, interceptions so far. The biggest thing that I've noticed out of Baker is that he's had a scramble in each game, late in the game. That's been big for them in winning. We saw Baker in past years use his legs to go get first downs and win games for teams. He's done it in all 3 games so far. So Baker Mayfield, huge reason on why the Bucs are 3-0 through 3 games. Number 4.
At number 4, I'm going with a guy you hinted at earlier. It's Jonathan Taylor. He's been called upon the most times in the NFL with 60 attempts already. That's more than Barkley, McCaffrey, everybody. And he's still having some of the best efficiency numbers in the league, too. 5.6 yards per carry, 112 yards per game. Only David Montgomery can really challenge him on that because of last night's game. So Taylor's going to be my Colts representative. When he's healthy, he is looking unstoppable.
My number 4 is represented from a team that's 1-2. I had to put Lamar Jackson in there because he's just been ridiculous in the first 3 games. He has 10 total touchdowns, which leads the NFL. 9 of them passing, so he's not just your running back now at this point that people like to label him as. He's been doing it through the air as well too as he has for the entirety of his career. All 3 of those losses have not been on, or not all 3. 2 losses have not been on him. Of course, with Derrick Henry having some rough fumbles late in the game, kind of like very identical situations in both of them. But regardless, Lamar Jackson's been better than ever. I didn't really think that was possible because he's already probably the most talented player in the league. Number 3.
Yeah, number 3 is where I got Lamar. Those 10 total touchdowns to 0 interceptions. And as long as Lamar's healthy, similar with Taylor, he's going to be on this list. Just even though he's been sacked a lot and has those 2 rough losses, it doesn't really get more efficient than Lamar Jackson. And he still leads the league in passer rating by a massive margin. And, I remember a couple years ago trying to decide if he was MVP worthy. It's like, well, man, the only other guy who compares to him is like Steve Young. And he's just completely surpassed that number more than anyone could ever imagine. So he's going to be on the list all season, probably.
Number three is where I slot Jonathan Taylor, and he's by far the biggest reason on why the Colts are 3-0 in my eyes. He's the reason why they win first down. He's the reason why Daniel Jones isn't having to convert 3rd and 15s. He's the reason why the Colts have scored so many possessions this year and have only had to punt once in the first 3 games of the season. He's averaging over 100 yards per game, 5.6 yards per carry. He has 4 touchdowns on the season. I didn't think that this guy could keep going. I know he's only 26 years old, but we saw how much he got used in college, and we saw how much he got used in his first couple years in the NFL, that it would have been reasonable for this guy to just be like, a washed running back at this point. But he's been so good, and I don't see him slowing down the season unless there's something crazy that happens.
I was teaching Kevin last night about Monty Ball and about how this is supposed to be what was going to happen to Jonathan Taylor. One pretty good Pro Bowl year, and your legs are just done. And he's going still.
Yeah.
Still doing it.
Yeah, him and Derrick Henry are just freaks of nature to me.
Mm-hmm.
Number two.
At number 2, I got Justin Herbert, the most yards in the NFL and yards per game with an 860, 6 passing touchdowns, 1 pick. But he's really up here for one reason. The Chargers are 3-0 still because they trust this guy to make big plays. He's thrown the ball over 100 times already, which is only matched by the quarterbacks who have been down all season long, like Prescott, Rattler, Bryce Young, and he's got way better numbers than those guys. So definitely on the upper tier. He passes the eye test too. I know you guys had to play him already. Incredible start for Herbert.
Number 2, Josh Allen for me. Just dominant in the first 3 games of the season. Maybe performances that, except for the first one. I mean, the first one was ridiculous regardless. But these last 2 weeks, I don't think you look at those performances and say, wow, that's an MVP type performance. But it really is, because he hasn't turned over the football. He's been not taking sacks. He's been using his legs to get first downs, as he does so well. And the plays that he had in the early part of his career that just ruined him as a potential MVP candidate are just not there anymore. He's taken out all the bad, subtracted some of the good, but now it's just all good. Like, there is no bad plays from him, it feels like. And it feels like regardless of what the score is, he can run, he can throw, he can get you out of any situation. We've seen that, pretty much already this year. So Josh Allen, MVP last year, is in the number 2 spot for me through 3 games. And number 1.
I am going to go with Josh Allen. 10 total touchdowns to no picks. Very similar stuff to Lamar Jackson, but that comeback win against Lamar Jackson's team, I think will give him the upper hand when it comes down to it at the end of the season. Just imagine what his numbers would look like if he did have to throw the ball against the Jets. His odds might be minus 250 instead of plus 250 to win back-to-back MVPs. So for now, I'm going to bet on Josh Allen over Herbert, but things could change. He could come out and be wild, but it seems like that's finally out of his system, which I didn't think was possible after watching him kind of grow up playing him 2 times a year in Buffalo.
Number 1, my MVP through 3 weeks is going to be Justin Herbert. Can't believe I'm saying this right now. But I also makes total complete sense, because whenever I watch him play the Raiders, I have this feeling that we have to play extremely well on offense to do anything against this guy, because he's not going to make the mistakes on offense. We saw him throw a pick against the Broncos. We saw him probably should have had a pick against the Raiders. But he's been just so good and under control in these games, and he's actually making plays now as well too. I talked about this last week or the week before with him. In the first year under that that Harbaugh offense, we saw him just not really try to make any plays. You just don't turn over the football, trust your defense, go win the game 17-14, and you'll be good. Now, I mean, they haven't put up 30 points yet, but he's been going out and making plays. He's been escaping from the pocket, using his legs, getting first downs, using all of his wide receivers. And it's just an incredible product that we're seeing through the first three games of the year. 3-0 in the division as well, too. I believe they're the only team that's played three straight
Yeah.
divisional games to start off the season. That's going to help them big time when we look at, week 14 and, oh, wow, they won those three games at the beginning of the year. Regardless of what the record is, they're probably going to have the tiebreaker over some of their divisional teams. And Justin Herbert's been the main reason for that. So he's my MVP through 3 weeks. Simple as that.
You got a pretty big head start on most of the league, that's for sure.
Exactly. Which brings us to the second half, college football stuff, led by Skyler.
Yes, sir. Another awesome week of college football ahead of us as everybody officially gets back into conference play, everybody other than Notre Dame. If you can't wait till Saturday morning, we got a Friday night game, pretty good Big 12 game. Arizona State tries to get back into the playoff conversation. They're hosting undefeated number 24 TCU. So Arizona State's a field goal favorite in that one. If you're addicted to college football like us, you'll be tuning in just in case. And Saturday, man, what an amazing slate. 9 a.m. Number 21 USC goes to number 23 Illinois. I'm not quite sure how Illinois is still ranked. They lost by 50 to Indiana, but nonetheless, this should be a pretty good showcase for USC quarterback Jaden Maeva. He looks pretty good, Kyle. If he does decide to stick around for another year after this too, I think he could reach Caleb Williams' numbers that he put up there. He's extremely efficient. So that game's pretty good, but really, the big dogs start playing later in the day. 12:30, number 4 LSU, surprisingly an underdog as they travel to number 13 Ole Miss. I expect this game to be an absolute shootout. And you would think all the hype would be surrounding Garrett Nussmeier and LSU's offense, but I'm really excited to see the new Ole Miss quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss. Lane Kiffin found this guy from Ferris State last year. And ever since he came in for the injured Austin Simmons, he has just straight up dominated. They beat Arkansas and Tulane in his 2 starts. Ole Miss is favored by 1.5. I don't even have a prediction. I'm just excited to see this guy play number 4 in the nation, see if he's legit. Also at 12:30, the underrated Auburn Tigers will go to Texas A&M. They're number 9 in the AP. Just in case the Aggies have one of their usual early season letdowns, we might have to tune into this one too a little bit. 4:30 on Saturday will be the best time slot of the season by far. First game, number 17 Alabama goes to number 5 Georgia. And this game isn't in Atlanta. It's an actual home game for Georgia at Samford. So they're a 2.5-point favorite. Georgia's defense, not really been the same after the big dogs up front left. Will it be enough for Alabama to turn the season around? At the same time as Alabama, Georgia, we get the Big Ten championship rematch game. Number 6 Oregon goes to number 3 Penn State. Oregon's offense has been humming with Dante Moore this season, but the Nittany Lions are still favored by 3.5 at home. It's going to be a whiteout. Penn State, I bet you, is going to dare Oregon to stop their run game because most people can't. This is your classic finesse versus power college matchup. And based off of history, I'm leaning Penn State, but I think this is another game that could have some massive numbers and Heisman implications too.
Yeah, definitely a good week of college football.
Yeah.
Something I noticed when I was looking at the spreads, just going through it, there's only 3 games that include a top 25 team that the spread is more than like 8.5. So that means a lot of close games or potentially close games according to Vegas. Yeah. And that always, bodes well for early season college football, which we don't get too often.
Mm-hmm. Well, that perfectly brings us into the Heisman Watch here this week. Last thing I got for you, another top 5 with some honorable mentions. I mentioned Jaden Maeva. They finally played a real team at USC. They played Michigan State, beat them up pretty good. So I'll have my eye on him. Nussmeier gets dropped out. They just haven't really had to throw the ball yet. And Dante Moore, also on the radar. He's been putting up big numbers at Oregon like most quarterbacks do. So we'll get into it. Number 5, I have Carson Beck. Early in the season, I take things week by week. If you play bad, you move down. Nothing's guaranteed. So Carson Beck's going to move down from 2 to 5. Miami played what might have been their worst offensive game against Florida on Saturday, and they still won 26-7. So I'm going to keep Beck alive. because he looks super locked in this season. Only 160 yards and a pick. That's not going to win you the Heisman, but that's okay if that's your worst game. Number 4, Missouri running back Ahmad Hardy. I called my shot last week, and he came through for me because Ahmad Hardy looks like the best back in the nation. 22 carries, 140 yards, and a touchdown in their win against South Carolina. And he only got about 60% of the carries in that game. This kid looks like Mark Ingram, and he's only a true sophomore. So I'm super excited to watch Missouri the rest of the year. Number 3 is Marcel Reed. Bye week for Texas A&M, so he's going to drop down just because 2 other guys are coming off kind of crazy games. But Marcel Reed is coming off a big win against Notre Dame. The big question is, does Notre Dame just suck? Or is this a guy we should really watch? Because Purdue scored 30 on Notre Dame on Saturday. But Marcel Reed's still in the SEC. He could turn it around. Number 2 really hurts because I did this right before the announcement. I had John Mateer. 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, ranked win over Auburn. Now we know he's having thumb surgery. His hand's all messed up. But the thing about college injuries, man, is we just don't know. We don't know if this guy's going to come back in time. Basically, with Oklahoma, they get Kent State in a bye week, and then they play Texas. So if he comes back for Texas, he could still be in the conversation. If he misses the next month, he's not. But basically, my material right up here was he's definitely got a little bit of Baker in him. He'll go run over a linebacker to get the fans excited. And this is kind of the perfect fit for Oklahoma. So it's sad to see him go down early in the season. But Kyle, number 1, we got a new contender, Fernando Mendoza, another quarterback. I had a pretty good feeling about this season. He may not go number 1 in the draft, but what a potential first Heisman moment in their absolute slaughter over number 9 Illinois. He was 21 for 23, 5 touchdowns. And this is really the first time this season that somebody just like flat out dominated a ranked team. So I'm going to give Mendoza the top spot this week.
Yeah. Good Heisman Watch. A lot of names that maybe you didn't expect in the early part of the year, which always usually means that a good college football season is coming, and it's already here, of course. We move into our layups and bowl predictions. Another rough week as the confusing NFL season continues. My layup last week was the Chargers -2.5 versus the Broncos. That did hit, which is good. Skyler had Green Bay -7.5 at Cleveland. We all know how that game went. This week, I have the Chargers -6.5 versus the New York Giants. This is in New York. This is Jackson Dart's first start. And a guy in Jackson Dart who's always looked to make the big play. That's kind of just how the Ole Miss offense was under Lane Kiffin, of course. But the Chargers don't allow the big play. We saw it with Bo Nix, and sometimes he struggled to make plays against the Chargers defense last week. We saw Geno Smith, of course. I just don't think the discipline is quite there yet for Jackson Dart to do enough in this game to make it less than a touchdown score. Wouldn't be shocked if there's a pick 6. Wouldn't be shocked if he just doesn't get much going and they have to put Russ in at some point, because Dable's obviously coaching for his life as well, too. It's not just, so Jackson Dart can develop. And I see the Chargers win by at least a touchdown here.
Yeah, Green Bay completely let me down last week. So I'm going back to college for my layup. I feel like I know college a little better than Vegas does. So I got number 25, BYU, covering a touchdown, 6.5 at Colorado. This one's interesting to me because Colorado started 3 different quarterbacks this year, and last year BYU crushed them with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter playing. So, I know Bear Bachmeier is a freshman quarterback. They're going to lean run, but Colorado doesn't know what's going on, man. I mean, it looks like Caden Salter from Liberty is going to retain that starting quarterback job, but hey, Deion's taken it from him before. So I think BYU can beat him by a touchdown.
Last week, my bold prediction, both of our bold predictions went red. I had Houston over Jacksonville +105. That did not hit. Skyler had Rutgers over Iowa +120. That did not hit.
Great game.
This week, I have Jacksonville +145 versus the Niners. Bit of a bigger spread than I expected here. And I think that's kind of where I just took the value. Jacksonville's coming off a good victory against the Houston Texans. SF, they get the victory over the Cardinals. I'm not high on the Cardinals at all. I don't think that they're good. I think it was a closer game than it should have been. I know Mac Jones is probably not going to be the starting quarterback probably be back to Brock Purdy this week. I don't think the gap between those two quarterbacks is really that big, especially in the Kyle Shanahan offense. Offense is still banged up for the Niners as well, too. Nick Bosa on the defensive side out for the season now, as we saw. So I say Jacksonville gets a road victory in Santa Clara.
That'd be pretty funny if Jacksonville is like 27th in the power rankings, but they're 3-1.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Also going NFL. I'm going a way bigger game though. I got Kansas City beating Baltimore on Sunday afternoon. Plus 130 for Kansas City at home. You don't see very often. I feel like there's one every year like this, and then Kansas City whoops them, and then Vegas goes, never again. My bad, guys. Baltimore just, I'm not calling them chokers, but that's the direction they're leaning after the first 3 weeks. Some bad fumbles, some bad decision making. And even though Lamar hasn't turned it over, it's a matter of time, man, before they really make a mistake here against a team like Kansas City. So I'm going to pick Kansas City to break even, back to 500.
That'll do it for episode 262. Next week, 263 could be a Monday episode, so look out for that because the MLB playoffs start on Tuesday. The episode will primarily just be MLB. We probably won't do much NFL because the NFL week won't be done yet. We'll be right to do playoffs. We should actually have a doubleheader on Monday night. Jets Dolphins being one of those games, so it's got to grin on. I don't know if any of those teams will be in the power rankings though, regardless. Actually, what is the second Monday night game?
Bengals Broncos.
Yeah. So maybe the Broncos are in there. Who knows? But probably hold off on that stuff. So we can do a full, after week 5. But it'll be fun next week. Tune in if you're looking for some MLB playoff stuff. And obviously we'll be able to do college previews as well too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually got a closer this week. Seth Curry coming to the Warriors. Did you know that?
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. There's a couple moves. The Warriors can't announce it officially until Kuminga makes up his decision, like Thursday night or something is the deadline for him. But Mark Stein, ESPN, officially was like, okay, I've been waiting to say this, but Al Horford, Melton, Gary Payton, and Seth Curry, they're going to the Warriors. I just wasn't allowed to say it yet. So good to know we're doing something.
Yeah. Something.
Old man.
That's all right.
Old man Warriors.
Yeah. All right. That'll do it. We'll see you guys next week for episode 263. It'll be a fun one.
Yes, sir. Playoffs.
Yep.
For postseason.
Yeah. Close enough.